Fame offers no shield against nature's raw and unforgiving power. Throughout history, even well-known figures have met shocking and brutal ends at the hands of animals they encountered, studied, or believed they understood. From trained performers to wildlife enthusiasts, these deaths unfolded in moments of terror that stunned the world. Here are 5 of the most horrifying celebrity deaths caused by animals ever recorded. On February 24, 2010, what was meant to be an elegant evening of entertainment at SeaWorld Orlando transformed into one of the most horrifying celebrity deaths ever caused by an animal. Tourists seated behind a massive glass panel during the park's Dine with Shamu experience expected wonder and spectacle. Instead, they became unwilling witnesses to a brutal killing that shattered the illusion of harmony between humans and captive apex predators. Dawn Brancheau, a highly respected and experienced trainer, was 40 years old and widely regarded as one of SeaWorld's best. She had worked with killer whales for years and shared a long history with Tilikum, the park's massive 11,000-pound star orca. During a routine post-show interaction known as a relationship session, Brancheau leaned over the edge of the tank. In a sudden, violent moment, Tilikum seized her and pulled her into the water. What followed was not a brief accident, but a prolonged and savage attack. Tilikum dragged her through the pool, violently shaking her body. Bones were broken, her lungs filled with water, and she was subjected to repeated trauma. Witness reports later described injuries so severe that they bordered on unimaginable. Even as SeaWorld staff attempted emergency procedures to restrain the whale, Tilikum refused to release her body. By the time Brancheau was recovered, she was already dead. In the immediate aftermath, SeaWorld portrayed the incident as a tragic miscalculation, a playful interaction gone terribly wrong. But many audience members and animal behavior experts were unconvinced. To them, the attack did not appear random or confused. It looked deliberate, controlled, and devastatingly effective. What made the tragedy even more chilling was that this was not the first time Tilikum had been involved in a fatal incident. Captured in 1983 as a 2-year-old calf off the coast of Iceland, he was sold into captivity and transported between marine parks. In 1991, while housed at Sealand of the Pacific in Canada, Tilikum was involved in the death of a young trainer who slipped into the pool. Alongside 2 other orcas, he repeatedly pulled her underwater, preventing her escape until she drowned. Her body was not recovered for hours. Sealand never recovered from that incident and shut down shortly afterward. Tilikum was transferred to SeaWorld Orlando, where he became both a marquee attraction and a prized breeding whale. Years later, another disturbing episode occurred when a man was found dead draped across Tilikum's back after secretly entering the park at night. His body showed extensive injuries, and key details were never fully explained. Then came 2010, the moment that forced the world to pay attention. Dawn Brancheau's death became the catalyst for widespread public outrage and deep ethical questioning. The incident was later examined in the book Death at SeaWorld and the documentary Blackfish, both of which exposed the darker realities of orca captivity and permanently altered public perception. The consequences were severe. Attendance dropped, reputations crumbled, and pressure from animal welfare organizations intensified. SeaWorld eventually announced it would end its orca breeding program, and trainers were no longer allowed to enter the water with the whales. Tilikum, once the park's most valuable asset, spent his final years increasingly isolated, floating listlessly in a confined space as his health deteriorated. In 2017, he died after a prolonged illness, his body ravaged by infection. Yet Tilikum was not an isolated case. Other captive orcas have also inflicted serious injuries and fatalities. Just months before Brancheau's death, another orca named Kaito killed his trainer at a marine park in the Canary Islands. These incidents reinforced a grim truth. A frustrated, confined killer whale is an extraordinarily dangerous animal. Some experts argue that captive orcas suffer from psychological trauma similar to post-traumatic stress. Others go further, suggesting something even more unsettling, that these animals may act with intention, Highly intelligent, socially complex, and emotionally aware, orcas are capable of recognizing confinement, deprivation, and loss. From this perspective, such attacks are not madness but resistance. The entertainment industry encourages the public to believe these animals are intelligent enough to perform tricks, yet not intelligent enough to understand their captivity or fight against it. Visitors are invited to care, but not to care deeply enough to question whether these animals ever wanted to be there. Zoos and marine parks often claim their animals are part of a loving human family. But these creatures have families of their own in the wild, families torn apart by capture, separation, and confinement. When those bonds are broken, the damage is profound and irreversible. Nearly 2 decades have passed since the world was stunned by the sudden and tragic loss of Steve Irwin, yet the shock of that day still lingers. Known globally as the crocodile hunter, Irwin wasn't just a television personality. He was a force of nature, a man whose boundless energy and fearless devotion to wildlife made him unforgettable. On September 4th, 2006, that extraordinary life came to a heartbreaking end during what should have been another routine day in the ocean he loved. At just 44 years old, Steve Irwin was filming off Australia's Bat Reef when fate intervened in the most unexpected way. He was in the water, snorkeling in relatively shallow seas, capturing footage for an underwater documentary. Due to rough weather earlier in the day, the crew had shifted plans and decided to film a short segment for his daughter Bindi's television project instead. It was meant to be a simple, calm shoot, no danger, no drama. Yet nature, unpredictable as ever, had other plans. As Irwin swam near a large stingray, the normally placid creature suddenly reacted. What followed happened in seconds. Mistaking Irwin's shadow for a predator, the stingray lashed out defensively with its tail. The movement was rapid and forceful, delivering multiple strikes in a flash. At first, the severity of the situation wasn't even clear. The stingray swam away, and it appeared, momentarily, that nothing catastrophic had occurred. But when the camera turned back toward Irwin, the reality became horrifyingly obvious. A sharp, serrated barb had pierced his chest, causing devastating injuries to his heart and lungs. Blood filled the water as his crew rushed to help. He was pulled onto an inflatable boat and transported urgently to the main vessel, where his colleagues began performing CPR. For more than an hour, they fought desperately to save him, taking turns and refusing to give up hope. Eventually, they reached the Low Isles, one of the nearest points of land. Despite the crew's relentless efforts, medics pronounced Steve Irwin dead at the scene. The wound was simply too severe to survive. News of his death spread rapidly across the globe, leaving millions in disbelief. This was a man who had faced crocodiles, venomous snakes, and some of the planet's most dangerous animals countless times, and survived it all with a grin and infectious enthusiasm. That he lost his life to a stingray, an animal rarely associated with fatal attacks, made the tragedy even harder for people to comprehend. In his final moments, Irwin remained conscious and aware of what had happened. Those with him tried to keep his spirits up, urging him to hold on and think of his family. Calmly and without panic, he acknowledged the seriousness of his injuries, offering words that would later break the hearts of those who heard them. Shortly after, the world lost one of its most passionate voices for wildlife. The public reaction was immense. Tributes poured in from fans, celebrities, conservationists, and world leaders. While officials offered a state funeral in his honor, his family chose a private farewell, keeping the moment intimate and personal. Later, a public memorial at Australia Zoo allowed millions to mourn together. Broadcast worldwide, the service drew an audience estimated in the hundreds of millions. An especially moving moment came when his young daughter Bindi stood bravely before the crowd to honor her father, capturing the strength and spirit he had instilled in her. Though Steve Irwin's life was cut tragically short, his legacy never faded. His wife, Terry, along with their children Bindi and Robert, carried his mission forward with remarkable dedication. Australia Zoo grew into a global center for conservation, education, and animal rescue, saving thousands of creatures and inspiring visitors from around the world. Through Wildlife Warriors, Irwin's vision continued to protect endangered species and habitats across continents. The final moments of a big cat show at an Oklahoma wildlife preserve turned into a nightmare no one present will ever forget. What was meant to be a controlled, educational demonstration ended in sudden violence, leaving a seasoned tiger handler dead as stunned spectators, including his own family, looked on in horror. The incident now stands as another chilling entry in the grim list of horrifying celebrity deaths caused by animals kept for human entertainment. Ryan Easley, 37, was inside a large enclosure at the Growler Pines Tiger Preserve near Hugo, Oklahoma, when the attack occurred. Deputies were dispatched to the private facility near the Texas border after an emergency call came in late Saturday. By the time law enforcement arrived, Easley was already dead. The attack unfolded quickly, with no opportunity for rescue. According to Choctaw County Sheriff Terry Park, the tiger involved suddenly turned on Easley during the closing moments of the show. Without warning, the massive animal began biting him and violently shaking his body inside the cage. There was no escape route, no barrier between man and predator. The tiger was described as particularly large and familiar to Easley, having been under his care for years. Familiarity, however, offered no protection in that fatal moment. Perhaps the most devastating detail is that Easley's wife and young daughter were present when the attack happened. As the tiger overpowered him, they were forced to witness the brutal reality of what can occur when wild instincts surface, even in animals that appear trained, calm, and well known to their handlers. Growler Pines Tiger Preserve, a private operation that allows visitors to tour the facility and observe big cats up close, released a statement acknowledging the tragedy. The preserve described Easley as someone deeply devoted to the animals he worked with, emphasizing that he understood the risks involved. According to the statement, his work was driven not by thrill-seeking, but by a profound respect and emotional bond with the tigers under his care. Following the incident, all tours were immediately suspended. The preserve operates under federal oversight because it houses animals not native to Oklahoma. Such facilities require permits from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service rather than state wildlife agencies. In the wake of Easley's death, questions surrounding oversight, safety protocols, and the broader ethics of private big cat facilities resurfaced with renewed urgency. Animal rights organizations were quick to weigh in, calling the incident a tragic but predictable outcome of using apex predators in public demonstrations. Representatives from advocacy groups stressed that aggression is not abnormal behavior for tigers. It is a natural response to stress, confinement, and stimulation. From this perspective, the real danger lies not in the animal, but in the belief that such creatures can ever be fully controlled. Further scrutiny revealed connections between Easley's operation and the controversial world of exotic animal breeding in the United States. Records show that Easley previously obtained tigers from the Greater Wynwood Exotic Animal Park, once owned by Joe Exotic, the infamous figure featured in the Netflix series Tiger King. Documentation confirming the transfer of young tigers years earlier was verified by Oklahoma agricultural officials, adding another layer to an already troubling story. Joe Exotic himself released a statement offering condolences, noting that Easley had worked with him in the past and had even built housing for tigers at his zoo. While the message framed Easley's death as occurring in pursuit of his passion, critics argue that passion alone cannot outweigh the dangers inherent in keeping and showcasing powerful predators. History supports their concern. Fatal attacks by big cats are not rare anomalies. In 1997, a Bengal tiger killed its trainer during a live circus performance in Pennsylvania, shocking an audience of hundreds. In 2003, one of the world's most famous animal performers, Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy, was nearly killed by a white tiger during a Las Vegas show. The attack left Horn with life-altering injuries and abruptly ended one of the strip's most iconic productions. Ryan Easley's death reinforces a sobering truth. No matter how experienced the handler, no matter how familiar the animal, wild instincts can surface without warning. Tigers are not props, performers, or pets. They are powerful, unpredictable predators, and when the illusion of control shatters, the consequences can be fatal. What began as a quiet solo hike through one of Canada's most scenic national parks ended in a chilling tragedy that shocked both the music world and wildlife officials alike. Taylor Mitchell, a rising folk singer with a promising future ahead of her, became the victim of one of the rarest and most horrifying animal attacks ever recorded in North America. Her death stands as a haunting reminder that even seemingly harmless wilderness encounters can turn deadly without warning. In October 2009, the 19-year-old singer-songwriter from Toronto was hiking alone along a trail in Cape Breton Highlands National Park in Nova Scotia. The park, known for its dramatic cliffs, dense forests, and peaceful hiking routes, had long been considered safe for visitors. Mitchell was not taking part in a dangerous expedition. She was simply enjoying nature during a break from her music tour. But deep within the wooded trail, danger emerged from the shadows. Without warning, Mitchell was attacked by a group of coyotes. What followed was a terrifying struggle for survival. Other hikers nearby suddenly heard desperate screams echoing through the forest and immediately called emergency services. By the time authorities arrived, the situation had escalated beyond control. According to police, the animals displayed shockingly aggressive behavior, a trait rarely associated with coyotes, which are typically timid and avoid humans. Officers reached the scene quickly and were forced to shoot one of the animals to stop the attack. Despite their intervention, Mitchell had already suffered severe injuries. Emergency responders reported multiple bite wounds across her body. She was rushed by air ambulance to a hospital in Halifax, clinging to life in critical condition. Despite medical efforts, she succumbed to her injuries the following day. The brutality of the attack stunned wildlife experts. Coyotes are generally known for their cautious nature and tendency to flee when encountering people. Fatal attacks are almost unheard of. A retired biologist with Nova Scotia's Department of Natural Resources described the incident as extraordinarily rare, emphasizing that such behavior was not typical and unlikely to be repeated. Yet that reassurance did little to ease the horror surrounding Mitchell's death. In response, park officials immediately closed the trail where the attack occurred. Warning signs in both English and French were posted throughout the area, alerting visitors to the presence of aggressive coyotes. Rangers began actively monitoring the park, attempting to determine what could have caused such an unprecedented incident. While there had been isolated reports of aggressive coyotes in the past, nothing on this scale had ever occurred within the park. The last known incident dated back several years and involved a minor bite, not a fatal mauling. Park authorities acknowledged the gravity of the situation, stating that while aggressive animal behavior had been noted before, they had never experienced anything so sudden, violent, and tragic. The attack raised difficult questions about wildlife behavior, human presence in natural habitats, and whether environmental factors such as food scarcity or habituation to humans may have played a role. Beyond the shocking nature of the attack itself, Mitchell's death resonated deeply because of who she was. She was not just a hiker, she was an emerging artist on the brink of wider recognition. Having recently earned her driver's license, Mitchell had set out on an East Coast tour to promote her debut album. Music was her passion, and the road ahead represented opportunity, freedom, and excitement. On her social media pages, Mitchell spoke openly about her musical inspirations, drawing influence from legendary artists such as Van Morrison, the Eagles, and Neil Young. Her sound blended introspective songwriting with classic folk sensibilities, earning her a nomination for a Canadian Folk Music Award in the Young Performer category earlier that year. Those who knew her described her as warm, compassionate, and full of life. Her manager spoke of a young woman who was thrilled to be performing, meeting audiences, and living her dream. The suddenness of her death left her family, friends, and fans devastated, struggling to comprehend how such a promising life could end in such a violent and unexpected way. Taylor Mitchell's death remains one of the most unsettling celebrity animal attacks in modern history, not only because of its rarity, but because it shattered the assumption that certain wild animals pose little threat to humans. Alone on a peaceful trail, far from crowds and danger, she encountered a force of nature that proved fatal. For Timothy Treadwell, grizzly bears were not simply animals. They were companions, protectors, and the center of his existence. He devoted years of his life to living among them in the remote wilderness of Alaska, convinced that his presence shielded them from human harm. In a tragic and horrifying twist of fate, the very creatures he adored became the cause of his death. In October 2003, Treadwell and his partner, Amy Huguenard, were brutally killed and partially eaten by grizzly bears in Katmai National Park, marking one of the most disturbing celebrity deaths caused by animals. Born Timothy Dexter in 1957 on Long Island, Treadwell's early life was marked by instability. He attended Bradley University on a swimming scholarship but dropped out before graduating. After moving to Southern California, he legally changed his last name to Treadwell and struggled for years with addiction. Everything changed after his first trip to Alaska in 1989. Encountering a grizzly bear up close became a transformative moment for him, an experience he later described as deeply personal and life-altering. He credited that encounter with helping him get sober and giving his life a new sense of purpose. From that point on, Treadwell returned to Alaska every summer, immersing himself in bear territory. Armed with a camera and a fearless attitude, he documented grizzlies at astonishingly close range, often speaking to them as if they were old friends. His dramatic personality and unconventional methods attracted media attention. He starred in a Discovery Channel series called The Grizzly Diaries and later appeared on national television, presenting himself as a guardian living on the edge of the wild. In 2003, Treadwell returned to Katmai National Park with his girlfriend, Amy Huguenard. They set up camp in Kaflia Bay, an area dense with bears. Although they initially planned to leave before October, when bears become more aggressive due to dwindling food supplies, they chose to stay longer. After briefly leaving the park, they returned for one final week, hoping increased rainfall would bring more salmon and more bear activity. That decision proved fatal. On October 5th, just one day before their scheduled departure, the couple encountered a bear near their campsite during rainy, low-visibility conditions. Investigators believe Treadwell stepped outside the tent to investigate the animal's presence. The bear, likely startled, attacked almost immediately. Treadwell called out to Huguenard as the bear mauled him. At one point, the animal retreated briefly, only to return when movement resumed. Huguenard attempted to help, shouting and urging Treadwell to fight back. Her screams may have unintentionally drawn the bear's attention. After killing Treadwell, the bear turned on her as well, ending both their lives in a violent and terrifying encounter. There were no witnesses, only audio evidence captured on Treadwell's camera, which later became infamous. The following day, a bush pilot arriving to pick up the couple discovered their destroyed campsite and a bear guarding human remains nearby. Authorities responding to the scene encountered two aggressive bears and were forced to kill them. Human remains were found inside one of the animals, underscoring the brutality of the attack. Bear attacks resulting in human deaths are exceptionally rare in Katmai National Park, despite it having one of the highest densities of brown bears in the world. Investigators concluded that several factors contributed to the tragedy. Poor visibility due to tall vegetation, camping directly along bear travel routes, the late season when bears are desperate for food, and the presence of food inside the tent. Treadwell's legacy remains deeply controversial. In 2005, filmmaker Werner Herzog released Grizzly Man, a documentary built largely from Treadwell's own footage. The film praised his ability to capture bears in intimate, vulnerable moments, while also criticizing his refusal to respect the boundary between humans and wild predators. While Treadwell believed he was protecting bears, critics argue his actions ultimately led to the deaths of both humans and animals.